2022 has been maybe one of the best years for tactical RPGs in recent memory, with games like Tactics Ogre Reborn, Triangle Strategy, and Symphony of War, the Nephilim Saga, all coming out in the last 12 months, as well as many others, all showing that there is a market for this genre, and many fans who, like yourselves, need these games in your lives. 2023 is already shaping up to be another fantastic year for tactics games, so here are 10 of the best to keep an eye on. Let's begin with number 10, Fire Emblem Engage. I had to put Fire Emblem on first, seeing as the game comes out in just over a month's time. It's almost here. It's been 3 years since Three Houses came out and became the biggest Fire Emblem to date, and fans of the franchise are practically foaming at the mouth to get their hands on the next game in the series, Engage. Personally, my experience with the series has always been up and down. I always find good characters that I like, and the support stories are always my favourite part of the franchise, but the gameplay mechanics and the world that they portray have sometimes been lackluster and too straightforward. This time, with the Emblem rings, the game has an interesting mechanic for me to look forward to. These Emblem rings are equipable items that augment a character's abilities and stats based on the ring they happen to be wearing, and they're all interchangeable. They also happen to be based on important characters from past games like Marth, Lyn, and Tiki, meaning that said classic figures will show up to lend a hand, a most devious plan for fans who, like myself, are there to enjoy my personal fan fiction. The possibility of new adventures and stories with these classic characters is going to be exciting. Fire Emblem Engage comes out on January 20th, exclusively for Nintendo Switch. Number 9. Jagged Alliance 3. Now then, some people are going to get annoyed because of some semantic garbage like, this here is a CRPG, and this isn't a tactics game. Does it have tiles? Yes. Does it have turn-based combat? Yes. Well, great news then, Jagged Alliance 3 belongs on this list. Huzzah! Now that about 20 people have clicked off in a huff because I don't agree with their out-of-date opinions, let's talk about this game, because it has some big shoes to fill. The second and last game in the Jagged Alliance franchise came out in 1999. So, 24 years later, THQ Nordic has decided to do something about it and use this IP once more. These aren't the same people who made the original games, but seeing as 2 decades had passed, you can hardly blame them. But you can see what is being shown here, and it is definitely made by people who knew what was great about the originals. In-depth combat and management with a ridiculous side to it that keeps things interesting. The premise is that your band of mercenaries have been hired to rescue the president of Grand Chien, a fictional tropical land, from a violent paramilitary force called the Legion. To do this, you get to select who to bring with you in your merry band of freedom fighters, using your wits, guns, and anything else you can get your hands on to win the day. There have obviously been tactics games that have used similar settings before, but it was the unique characters and funny writing of the original games that made it stand out. Assuming that developer Haemimont Games understands this and can fulfill its end of the bargain, Jagged Alliance 3 could well be one of the best strategy RPGs of 2023. Number 8. Front Mission 2 and 3 remakes. So if you've been on my channel before, you were probably wondering when I would mention these 2 games. First off, if you're unfamiliar with the franchise, Front Mission is a world in which giant mechs, or Vanzers as they're known, allow you to take control of your own giant robot army and blow shit up. And who doesn't want that? Anyone who is big on anime and more specifically Gundam, or Code Geass, or Evangelion, or the like will be interested in this. The game allows you to take command in wonderful turn-based tactical battle, a squad of mechs blowing stuff up and tackling political intrigue, just like in those anime that you loved as a kid, but giving you direct command of your own unit and your own destiny. These remake games, developed by Forever Entertainment, the first of which was given to us in November of 2022, have so far not really blown me away, honestly. As I mentioned in my review of the game, linked down below, Front Mission First Remake was less a remake and more of a remaster, taking the structure of the original game and putting a new graphics engine and a very small number of quality of life changes onto it. This sounds disappointing, and yet it does offer some hope for the second and third games in the series. Because while changes needed to be made on the first game, I know for a fact that Front Mission 3 was a massive improvement back in 1999, and what developer Forever Entertainment has shown us is that they know how to make a faithful rendition of what made those games great, whilst even not having the understanding, or permission, to make the changes that need to be made. However, with a product with less intrinsic flaws as the blueprint, Front Mission 2 and 3 remakes could actually be big hits when they release next year. Number 7. Advance Wars Reboot. This one is maybe the weirdest game on here, because it shouldn't be. Advance Wars was set to come out in April of 2022, only to be delayed due to the ongoing Ukraine war. As the name playfully suggests, this game is another remake of Advance Wars 1 and 2 from the Game Boy Advance, back when Intelligent Systems were allowed to make games that weren't Fire Emblem. As I say that begrudgingly, I do have to admit that I always preferred Fire Emblem over Advance Wars, but I do understand that the series rightfully had its fans, as the series was always well made and well reviewed. Regardless, the Advance Wars games give you command over a modern army, including infantry, tanks, planes, ships, and everything in between as you attempt to wipe out the enemy in what is perhaps the least realistic and threatening way possible. It is a Nintendo game after all. Honestly, as I was never really the biggest fan of the series and I'm not a fan of the new art style that they're using for this remake, I probably won't be covering this game, but I do know the game definitely has its fans out there, so it would be wrong not to include it on this list. Number 6. Arcadian Atlas. Yet, we aren't just covering modern games with guns on here, we have some fantasy period games as well. This next one has some pretty awesome Final Fantasy Tactics vibes going for it, developed by Twin Otter Studios in their first game and being described as a story of two lovers in a war-torn kingdom with a deep tactical battle system to round out the comparisons nicely. Boasting 12 classes and 150 skills, as well as a focus on a grand-scale plot, Twin Otter know what made those Matsuno games great and seem to be doing a good job of recreating that feel that the PS1 games had. Any game that is going for that look is going to get attention from me, by the way. I'm a sucker for Tactics Ogre and FFT. I can't help myself. And when somebody goes to all the trouble of creating very pretty sprite work like this, then I'm going to check it out. Arcadian Atlas is going to be a PC and Mac exclusive and is set to be coming out in summer of next year. So wishlist this one to keep in touch with its development, or, subscribe to my channel for all the news on tactical RPGs. Number 5. Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. Being the online god that I am, you might be surprised to find out that I was a big nerd in school. I hung out with my nerd friends and played nerd games like Warhammer 40k a lot when I was growing up. I mean, the board game, not the video games. We didn't have them back then. But seeing what the Warhammer universe has become and what the franchise gives its name to these days has not always been a good time for me. Rather something I view with suspicion. Rogue Trader is doing something that has caught my attention, however. Can you guess what it is? If you answered tiles, then you know me well, and get 100 Woodhouse points to be spent on the online store of my merch. Use the code Woodhouse to get 1,000,000% off your next purchase. Anyway, Rogue Trader is a tactics game, and an interesting one at that. Steering away from 40k's biggest faces, the Space Marines, Rogue Trader gives you command of an exploratory force, well away from the Galactic Empire and the Coronis Expanse, and allows you to make your own choices in how to deal with what lies out there, in some twisted version of Star Trek that honestly could have a lot of promise. The trailers so far have shown a lot of time spent with your crew and making choices away from the battlefield, fleshing out the cast and story as you fly around the cold world of space in your void ship. Combat itself seems to be a multi-layered experience, showing all the goodies that 40k has come to be known for, with its flamethrowers, chainsaw blades and such. They definitely make this an 18+ game. There isn't a given release date as such yet, but this is shaping up to be one of the most exciting games that I'm looking forward to next year. Number 4. Crimson Tactics: The Rise of the White Banner. It's good to see that games like Final Fantasy Tactics are still being made, if for no other reason than for old guys stuck in their ways like me to enjoy. Crimson Tactics is the first game by developer and publisher Black March Studios, and sticks to the things you would want such a game to do. There are 25 playable classes, 200 abilities, hundreds of weapons, and story recruitable characters, a mount system that lets you use creatures like horses and dragons. All of which taking place in a political intrigue plot with that old English script that Tactics Ogre and FFT were famous for. I really like the animation style that they have in this game. It reminds me a bit of Jagged Alliance on the PSP, with its very smooth movements of the characters and their actions. It's quite a contrast to Arcadian Atlas, the other game with inspiration from Final Fantasy Tactics. I'm curious how people will side with one versus the other. Crimson Tactics definitely looks more modern, but there's a charm to sprite work that just hits different for me. Where do you stand, Crimson Tactics: The Rise of the White Banner is a PC exclusive, and is slated for the Q1 of 2023. Number 3. Miasma Chronicles. If you played 2018's Mutant Year Zero: Road to Eden, then you should already be familiar with the developer, The Bearded Ladies. I played that game back when it was released and enjoyed it for the most part. It was a short, concise story of humanoid mutant animals set in a post-people Earth. It had a slight difficulty curve issue, but seeing as this was their first game, I'm more than happy to see what they have in store for us this time with Miasma Chronicles. This strategy RPG is set in the US of A, but naturally some shit has gone down and it's not quite the same from what we recognise. It actually shares a lot of the stylings of something like Stranger Things, with what it calls the Miasma. Elvis and his little band of misfits have to go and fix the Miasma before America can be destroyed, visiting various locales of differing states of messed up as they journey about. There's no exact release for this one yet, but if you are interested, the Steam page has lots of broadcasts done by the devs to keep you informed about what's going on with the game's development. Miasma Chronicles is coming to PlayStation 5, Xbox and PC, and if Mutant Year Zero is anything to go by, that game was day and date on Game Pass. So here's hoping for another game I'll be picking up on the cheap. Number 2. Metal Slug Tactics. Anyone who has been following strategy RPG news knew this one would be on the list somewhere. The classic SNK series, known for its gorgeous sprite work, was announced at E3 18 months ago now, leaving me very excited for more. Developed by Lycia Studio, there has been precious little news since that announcement, leaving some to wonder if there's been some trouble with progress on the game. The way I see things like this, though, is that companies should take as long as they need to make a great product, and hopefully SNK will agree with me on that one. If you're unfamiliar with Metal Slug, by the way, it's normally a side-on shoot-'em-up series with amazing animation and sprite work made famous during the Neo Geo SNK days of when arcades was still a thing. Salutes in the comments for all our fallen arcade brothers, please. It was a better time. Anyway, Metal Slug Tactics came out of nowhere, and being a genre I love, partnered with a very famous franchise, could potentially make this into something very special. The game is also being published by .emu, who are on a tear at the moment after Streets of Rage 4 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Two excellent callbacks, and hopefully setting up for another big hit with Metal Slug Tactics. As I said before, information has been sketchy on this one, but with it coming to Switch and PC, subscribe to the channel to keep informed of more info as soon as it becomes available. Number 1. Demon School. This is it, the number 1 game I'm stoked to cover next year. Demon School is a mix of a bunch of RPG tropes mixed together to form what I think could be a killer combination. A spooky university setting, a school life structure taken from Persona with characters you hang out with, and of course a kick-ass multifaceted combat system with which to take on the evils of this world and protect the ones you care about. Oh, and of course, the game looks amazing. I love this style that has been chosen here. It reminds me of Persona 3 with its dark, foreboding demeanor. It's the peak of game design for me. Too many games these days are cutesy, childlike efforts, and Demon School isn't having any of it. People die and giant skulls can throw their enormous brains at you just because they can. And how many games can you say that about? On a personal note, if anyone from developer Necrosoft Games is watching and you're in need of people to review the game, my channel is small, I get it, but I am 100% here for you guys. There have been some hands-on reports about the game so far from larger outlets, lucky bastards, and they have all said what I figured from the first time footage of the game was shown during E3 this year. This game looks like it kicks ass. You need to pay attention to it if you like strategy RPGs, which considering you've watched all the way to here, you must be. So the devs on their Discord are being cagey about if a demo will become available, but hopefully a copy of what larger outlets were given for impressions could be revealed for us mere mortals sometime soon. And then I, my friends, will be making a video all about this delightful piece of video game. Stay tuned. And that's it, everyone. I hope you found something to be excited about in the coming year in this video. I personally think it's going to be another great one for strategy RPGs, whether you like fantasy, post-modern giant robots, or everything in between. The tactics scene is alive and well, thanks to all the games and the developers I've mentioned here. If you would like to stay informed of all the strategy RPG goings-on, please consider subscribing, as my plan for next year is to attempt to stay informed of all tactics games and to cover all of them to some standard next year. On that note, if you think I've missed anything important or any important games coming up, please let me know in the comments below. Or if you disagree with any of the games I've listed, comment below so I know to block you for your terrible opinions. That's a joke, by the way. Yeah. Anyway, that's going to do it for now. So, everybody, thank you for watching. I hope you've had a lovely 2022. And here's for next year being just as good. I'll see you all next time. Ciao.